US and Chinese officials are in Sweden this week, racing against an August 12 deadline to prevent the return of sweeping tariffs. If talks fail, duties on Chinese goods could jump to 55%, or even 145%, as seen in previous trade escalations. Washington wants big wins: access to China's banking and investment markets, cuts to oil imports from Russia and Iran, and more purchases of US food and energy. In exchange, the Trump administration may offer some relief, loosening export controls on aerospace and semiconductor tools, and possibly easing visa restrictions. But China holds cards too. It dominates the supply of rare earth minerals critical to US defense and tech sectors. Domestic alternatives are years away. Beijing knows it, and it's prepared to use that leverage. US retailers are already feeling the squeeze. Inventory stockpile during previous tariff pauses is running out. With new shipments priced under steep tariffs, costs are rising, just as the holiday season looms. Toys, electronics, and apparel are all set to get more expensive. Unlike past years, companies are less willing, or able, to absorb the difference. The price hike will hit US consumers directly. Trump, meanwhile, needs a win. One that's big enough to show strength but won't trigger backlash over rising prices. But Beijing's stance is hardening. After watching how Washington treated allies like Canada and even Ukraine, Chinese officials are determined not to let President Xi lose face. Beijing reportedly wants a communication ceasefire, a freeze on negative public comments from US officials, as a condition for continuing negotiations. At the same time, China is accelerating its push for self-reliance, investing heavily in domestic chip production to reduce future vulnerability. Back in North America, Canada is charting its own path. While Trump has already secured a flashy deal with the EU, Canada has resisted pressure. Prime Minister Mark Carney isn't rushing to sign a weak agreement just to avoid tariffs. Ottawa is holding firm, strategically positioning itself for the critical 2026 USMCA review. But the pressure is real. The US has already slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian goods and is threatening to raise it to 35%. Still, Canada isn't folding. Instead, it's preparing for long-term resilience, not short-term optics. That strategy may be working. Canada has quietly retaliated with its own tariffs, but it's also diversifying. Provincial leaders are building new export lanes, forging ties outside North America, and even looking east. Ontario Premier Doug Ford recently hinted that if US instability continues, Canada may deepen trade with China. This isn't posturing, it's a potential pivot. Ontario alone trades over $43 billion annually with China, and Canadian companies are already adjusting. Brewers, for instance, are sourcing aluminum from China to avoid inflated US prices. This is more than a trade shift, it's a geopolitical signal. If Canada reduces reliance on the US, it weakens a strategic bond that Washington has long depended on. Trump's tariffs, meant to protect US jobs, may end up driving key partners into the arms of rival powers. And the economic impact at home? Substantial. In 2024, Canada bought $349 billion worth of US goods, more than Japan, Germany, and the UK combined. If even part of that trade shifts to China, the damage will hit US workers in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and beyond. At the heart of it all is a pattern. Trump often declares negotiations dead, only to walk out hours later with a historic deal. It's theater. Most of these so-called deals lack binding enforcement or clear timelines. They're frameworks, not finished agreements. Canada has noticed, and instead of playing along, it's demanding something more. The EU deal, for example, included vague promises of hundreds of billions in investments and energy purchases, but came bundled with a 15% tariff on EU goods and 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. The cost is already trickling down to American consumers and small businesses. In this climate, Canada has leverage. By aligning with US industries, like auto manufacturers in Michigan and food processors in Wisconsin, Canada can make the case that tariffs hurt both sides. This is the gamble: rush into Trump's pattern of symbolic deals, or hold out for one with substance. In a world of shifting alliances, the question isn't who signs first. It's who gets something real. And right now, Canada is betting that patience, not panic, will deliver the better deal. This is True State Report. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.